Chuck DeVore, the Vice President of the Texas Public Policy Foundation. Chuck, good morning.
Good morning, Chad. How are you?
Doing well. I appreciate it. Appreciate you giving us a shout today. And we were limited on time today, but I guess the good thing is not much is going on with the legislature because, as always, things get started a little slowly, don't they?
They do. They have to organize themselves, and there's a lot of new folks in the legislature, new leadership on the Senate side, and new rules out of the Senate that really change things, getting rid of the 2/3 rule and going to a 3/5 rule.
Yeah, that is the big news of the week, really. Besides the swearing in, the big news is this new rule down in the Senate. How will this benefit Texas and benefit really even those of us out here in West Texas?
Well, I think there's a few things, and I know that for a lot of your listeners, the rules of a body in the legislature are pretty arcane, right? So, in the Senate, you need to have a certain number of votes to move legislation forward, to bring it up for consideration. In the past, unless the lieutenant governor allowed it to, you'd need 13 of the 31 members could block a bill. They could say no, right, and stop it. Now that threshold is pushed down to 11. So instead of a 1/3 being able to block consideration of a bill, now it's only you need 60% to approve rather than 2/3 to approve. Mm-hmm. Now, why is that important? Well, what I think the main thing it does is it allows the Senate to produce more legislation earlier in the session and send it over to the House. And see what the House is going to do with it, rather than having a whole bunch of legislation later on and then reducing the leverage that the Senate would have over the House in seeing whether or not they would consider the Senate legislation and pass it. And because the Senate's a very conservative body this time around, I think it's the most conservative Senate in Texas history, I think what that means is we're going to see more conservative legislation pass the Senate and get over to the House. And if the House sits on it or doesn't want to move it, then there'll probably be some inter-house hostage-taking, which happens from time to time when you have a bicameral legislature.
Yeah, we've seen where the House has been the more conservative body in recent years. Now that's flipped. Does this put that much more pressure not only on the House but on Joe Strauss?
Well, again, I think it's all part of the way the system was meant to function. In other words, every state and the federal government, other than Nebraska, has a bicameral legislature, right? They've got a House or a House equivalent. Sometimes it's called an assembly, and they've got a Senate. And there's a lot of back and forth, and there's not only tension between the parties, between Republican and Democrat, but there's also a lot of tension between the houses, between the upper house and the lower house. And I think what this rule change does is it kind of rebalances the power and makes the Texas Senate a little more like some of the Senates in other states, in that it increases the power of the Texas Senate and its ability to set the agenda, as opposed to sitting back and really letting the House drive things.
Visiting with Chuck DeVore, Vice President of the Texas Public Policy Foundation. And Chuck, we're short on time today, but we're going to be visiting with you, I know, every Friday at 9 o'clock just to talk about the legislative session and what all is going on. But I want you to tell us, tell our listeners, for those who really haven't heard of the Texas Public Policy Foundation, tell us a little bit about what y'all do.
Well, we're a free market think tank. We believe in individual liberty and responsibility, limited government. We've been around for about 25 years here in Texas. Some people call us kind of the Heritage Foundation of Texas. We've got about 40 employees. We have a staff analysts that work in certain specific areas like fiscal policy, tax policy, energy and the environment, 10th Amendment, health care, criminal justice reform. And we produce papers and research documents and work very closely with the members of the legislature and their staff, as well as the statewide elected officials and their staff as well, just trying to give them some advice about how we can improve Texas and increase the amount of prosperity in Texas and increase the amount of individual liberty in Texas.
That's great. TexasPolicy.com is the website. Chuck, we'll visit with you again next week. Appreciate you.
Looking forward to it.
Have a good one.
Thank you.
That's Chuck DeVore, Vice President, Texas Public Policy Foundation.